I would kindly like us to put our hands together to welcome General Retired Dr. Robert Kibochi for a public lecture to our university. Thank you, General, and we are very greatly honored to have you here in the university.
Thank you very much indeed. Unfortunately, I think you've exposed me greatly by presenting my here. Because it would be very difficult now for your audience here to relate with this person before them.
Yeah. Is it safe?
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. I think we're good.
Okay.
Should be fine.
No, okay. Okay, it's better there. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much. The Vice Chancellor, Peter Mushiri, the DVCs here present, the CEO of Mwai Kibaki Referral Hospital, faculty, staff and students of Dedan Kimathi University, good afternoon. Good afternoon. I am very pleased to be here to speak to you, and I would like to first of all thank the Vice Chancellor for thinking of sending or inviting a former CDF to speak to you here. I know that my boss, General Karangi, is your Chancellor, and I'm sure he must have also had an opportunity to speak with you on various areas. I must also acknowledge the fact that I am coming into this college, a university that is a renowned university based on the name that is named after. Dedan Kimathi Washuri, for us in the military, know him fence. This gentleman is highly motorized. I've had the opportunity myself when I was a student at the Army Command and Staff College in the UK as a young 35-year-old to present a case study on Dedan Kimathi and his strategies that he presented the Mau Mau with to defeat the British. I can assure you the British were not very amused by that, but I rubbed it in all the same, because I knew they didn't believe that an African of that time could organize their pricing in the manner that therefore, it is important for me to have been honored to come here and speak about issues relating to security, technology, and leadership. I have led, as the professor has said, for close to 44 years, rather over 44 years. I have led in every position there is to lead in the Kenya Defense Forces, as a second lieutenant, all the way to leading the mighty Kenya Defense Forces. And I have to assure you, you have the finest defense forces in this continent. And for you who are aspiring to join, be assured that you get satisfaction in that career. I am lost for the starting point, because I need us to get to understand each other. I know most of you are technologists, and as you heard, I am both a technologist and a strategist. So I'll be trying to mix the two of them. But I would like to start by, first of all, highlighting some concepts that I think are important in addressing the topic that the professor suggested that I do, the role of leadership and technology in global security management and the lessons from the military. I would need us to first of all understand the concept of Kenya national security, what it is and how it has been defined in the Constitution, because that is the basis of our national security. We cannot start talking about global security without understanding exactly what it is that our national security is all about. Article 238 of the Kenyan Constitution articulates what national security is. And I think you can read it at your own time. And the first thing it does is to elaborate the very first reason of Kenya national security as protection against internal and external threats to Kenya's territorial integrity and sovereignty. Territorial integrity, our borders, both land borders, air borders, and sea borders. That is the first thing that the Constitution tells us. It also says is the protection of the people of Kenya, and their rights, freedoms, prosperity, peace, and stability. So the national security dimension from a Kenyan Constitution point of view is that national security is human-centric. Human-centric to the extent that it is protecting the Kenyan people, whether from external aggression or from internal instability. I also need to highlight that within the context of that Kenya has its own national interests. And I would like to refer back to the professor saying that the military is highly disciplined and is highly patriotic. And the reason for that is that Kenya has interests. Just like any nation, Kenya has interests, and those interests are articulated in our defense, our foreign policy. The foreign policy articulates 4 areas that are critical in terms of pursuing Kenya's national interests. The first is the whole question of the protection against external aggression. The Kenyan Constitution, the Kenya foreign policy is very clear that we will pursue those interests of ensuring that we are safe, we are secure at any time. And I think you're very cognizant of the fact that Kenya has employed that particular requirement when the Al-Shabaab became a menace in 2011 by prosecuting a war externally to pursue the threat of Al-Shabaab, and therefore pursuing Kenya's national interest of survival as a state. Every nation must pursue their interests for survival. And that is why Israel is involved in protecting itself from destruction by external forces. So Kenya Defense Forces then exists to do exactly that. And so that if you join the Kenya Defense Forces, you will know that you will have to fight to the end and you have to win the wars. So it is critically important to understand that. Secondly, is to promote regional and global security, peace and security. Our interest is promotion of regional and global security. And then that particular perspective is critical. It's critically important. It is not the mandate of the KDF to do that. It is the mandate of other institutions of government to pursue regional and global security. So Kenya therefore supports regional organizations Kenya supports multilateralism at every level. Kenya pursues to be the leader and an influencer in the region in peace and security, and therefore pursuing a diplomacy of conflict management. And Kenya has extremely done well in that particular area, pursuing peace in Southern Sudan, in Somalia, and in other regions by employing the Kenya Defense Forces to undertake peacekeeping in very many countries abroad. The peacekeeping activities that we undertake are anchored on the pursuit of Kenya's interests in promoting regional and global security. And there are people who will ask, why should they be in peacekeeping when we have so many problems like cattle rustling and the rest? Kenya has to do both, has to do the internal dimensions and the external dimensions, because it's critical for us to lead as a nation in areas that involve the region and the globe. Advancing national economic security is also critical as an interest for Kenya, involving us finding trade partners, collaborations, and invitation of foreign direct investments into the country to be able to get our people in good stead. And finally, is promoting Kenya's international standing. To a large extent, Kenyans have demonstrated, including this institution, our international standing. The professor, or the vice chancellor was telling me that you had an award that was provided recently, and you called it Washington Award, which was only presented to your university and 2 other universities. That is your part that you're playing in promoting Kenya's standing in the international space. Our athletes who do a great job out there, breaking records, they present our prestige as a nation. And therefore, when you leave this institution and you go into any environment that you'll be involved in, you will have to ask yourself, what part can you play in promoting Kenya's national interests? Not individual interests, but our national interests. Now, why is it necessary for us to pursue national interests? For good reason. That globally, the landscape of security has changed. You will all know that the United States has been considered as the only power after the collapse of the Soviet Union in the 1990s. But that has changed completely, and for good reason, because there has been a lot of developments that have promoted many countries to become more powerful or equally powerful, like the United States. China and Russia have surged to become global powers. The pursuit of India, for example, to becoming the major power in the Western Indian Ocean is exemplified by its ability to undertake activities beyond its borders. And therefore, for us as a country, we'll ask ourselves is, how do we navigate around a world that is not unipolar as we knew it, but a multipolar environment? From economic dimensions and trade, the world financial organizations are becoming almost irrelevant. The creation of the BRICS, for example, which is challenging the very essence of the Western-led financial institutions, is a major concern to the West. BRICS today has got the highest foreign direct investment in Africa. And the BRICS, as you know, is a bloc of 10 countries, 3 of them from Africa, Ethiopia, South Africa, and Egypt. And therefore, the question here would be, would Kenya need to be in this bloc? Precisely, because it is by challenging the status quo that countries can prosper. So it is important to know that these particular changes are taking place in all dimensions, not just in finance, not just in trade, but also in military power. And I said power, national power, is the ability to influence. If you have no power, you can't influence. So Kenya has the capacity to do that. And in terms of how this power is played out, it is played out in 4 domains. First is diplomatic domain, what is called the diplomatic power, the ability to act within the multilateral organizations, bilateral and multilateral organizations, to pursue your interests as a country, being part of the United Nations, being part of the African Union, and all other organizations, including the regional organizations, EGH, East Africa Community, and the ICGLC. The other one is information. And this dimension of information is important because it touches also on this institution. Information has become a major power, a global power. Because today, because of globalization and interdependencies, the whole world is interconnected. We have huge data that is stored in every place, whether that is military data, in databases, whether it's a national data. This is a huge resource which can be used by adversaries to bring down a country. And therefore, information management becomes a critical piece within the contestation of power. And therefore, we ask ourselves, how are we, especially us here, today I've had the opportunity to interact with a number of projects, the very good projects that you are doing here. And I have seen a lot of work that is going on. Now, the question we must ask ourselves is that how do we store this information that we generate when we are undertaking designs and research? Do we leave this information to be exploited by other people who will come, steal the information and do whatever they want to do with it? And therefore, information management is a critical piece. And that is why during my time in the Kenya Defense Forces, we agreed deliberately to ensure we have a military database with all the information that we have. Because the loss or the theft of that information could have drastic security threats to the country. So, as you are learning here, you must be able to put information security as one of the most critical resources that this country has. And information resides in areas, and that information that resides within the Kenyan border, whether land, air, or sea, is Kenyan resource and is a power that we can be able to use to leverage on. And the other, obviously, is the economic power in the economic domain. Kenya continues to lead in the region, in this area, but can we do more? Absolutely. There are areas that we could do more. And one of the areas that we must ask ourselves, I think is coming out very clearly within the context of the new administration in the US, is that aid is not sustainable. And for us to be able to develop and create jobs for young people, there has to be a change in dimension towards investments. Investments that can be able to establish factories. You are generating a lot of initiatives. I listened to a gentleman who was working on the drone technology. And when you look at the value that drones are being used in the world, and even in the continent, both as logistics drones, communication drones to provide communication relays in sky. They're being used to undertake surveillance in other areas and reconnaissance. And the technology that is being used in drones, as I saw today, is something that can be done internally. But there has to be a linkage between what you are doing and the industry. Because production cannot be done at university level. University produces knowledge, provides insulation, innovation, and provides the practicability of that particular innovation being converted into a sellable, marketable solution. So I think there is that last mile connectivity between what is done here and what should be done outside there. And the last instrument of power that we have, and the most potent, is the military. The military is the instrument, the last instrument of power, to the extent that when anything doesn't work, it has to be the military doing it. And that is why the military is organized and structured in a manner that it can be able to assist in every dimension. The military has not only war fighters, but engineers, civil, mechanical, electrical, any area of study of medicine is within the military. And I think the military has portrayed itself and demonstrated its capability to participate in areas of national development. There was a time that those who do not understand the reason why, for example, the military will be deployed to carry out the development of the Kenya Shipyards Limited, for example, which was developed during my time. And the reason is that the military has capacities that they can use and which can diffuse into the civilian world. And we know world over, including the internet, was a creation of the military as they were trying to counter a nuclear threat in terms of communication. And therefore, including fiber optics. So when you have a shipyard factory, it has the potential to employ people for civilian applications. It has also the capacity to provide the means for the military to sustain itself. Instead of buying ships, you can sustain yourself by having ships done locally. The MV Uhuru 2 that was done in Kisumu, and I believe some of you might have the opportunity to visit, you will see that through partnership, this ship was built, this vessel was built in hardly 2 years. What does that tell you? Majority of those who did this ship are Kenyan engineers trained in these institutions. And therefore, it is incumbent, I think, for these institutions to have the support to be able to generate more power. I remember, for example, our ships, our Kenyan Navy ships used to sail all the way to Spain, the Netherlands, for refit. A ship is given midlife refit after 25 years or 50 years, and you can push it to another 25 years because you just have to replace all the systems the systems that the ship have. And when the shipyard in Mombasa was done, the MV Shujaa was done by Navy personnel, saving the government a lot of money. So we have the capacity to do this within the institutions that we have, and that is critically important. And let me now come to the issue that is important in terms of to understand the global security dynamics that we are currently having to deal with. We are having to deal with the demographic challenges that we have in the continent, and especially in Africa. Over 60% of our population is young. The population is projected to grow by another 1.5 billion by 2050. But there's a lot of potential in Africa to be able to provide for this population, because it is documented very clearly that Africa has 24% of arable land in the world, in the globe. 24% of arable land in the globe is in Africa. But only 9% of agricultural products come from Africa. What does that tell us? And that informs even Kenya, for example. The fact that we have dry lands doesn't mean that they are not productive. They need water, and this is what really will provide us with the production of agriculture in very many dimensions within the continent. There is also the whole question around the increased competition for resources in the continent. Africa still remains as the bastion for resources. When I was discussing with the lady at the semiconductor facility, where some of the material have to be imported, and they're imported, they are actually re-imported because they come from Africa, go to the West, refined and then brought back to us to rebuy. So there is the whole question of the accelerated technological revolution, which now touches on Asia, and what that means for global security, the impact of these emerging technologies on global security. And I'll be wanting to hear from you on what your source, what your view is, particularly within the context of various technologies, like I said, the drones, the artificial intelligence, robotics, quantum computing, and nanotechnology. How does this fit in within the continent? Is it time for us as a continent to seize the moment of new technologies, or we're going to have to wait for these technologies to be exploited and then thrown down our throats by the West and the East? From a global security perspective, you will know, for example, that AI now is being used to power nuclear missiles. And when it gets to the time that they will have autonomous vehicles to deliver weapon systems, what implications will that have on the global security? As we speak today, the nuclear weapons have not been used since Hiroshima, 1945. What would happen if a country X decides to use an AI-powered nuclear weapon without control of a human being, the whole implications of this will be a major issue. Now, in the context of nuclear weapons, countries have survived because there have been norms and ethics that have been able to constrain the world, the nuclear non-proliferation treaties, which have worked to some extent. How do you then, when you have autonomous systems, how do you control them? How do you create norms on how to control who does what? How do you control, for example, having autonomous drones that can be able to fly on their own? And one of the challenges that there is that these are not state-controlled technologies. These technologies diffuse across corporations, across anybody who can be able to buy. What happens tomorrow if the Al-Shabaab is able to buy, for example, weaponized drones, okay, that have long ranges to strike our towns? And this is not far-fetched. When you read the media and you've been hearing about the application of the unmanned undersea vehicles by the Houthis militias in Yemen, along the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, where they have been hitting not just merchant ships, but also naval ships from the US and other countries. You've heard about the Houthis having missiles that fire into Saudi Arabian oil fields. Now, these are not state actors, these are non-state actors with those capabilities. Is it far-fetched that these capabilities can be acquired by other non-state actors that are near us? So we cannot say, for example, that these things are happening too far away. They are not. They are happening, and we must be ready to start asking ourselves, how do we develop countermeasures? One of the critical problems that I had when I was leading the Kenya Defense Forces was that we had these Al-Shabaab guys who would use commercial drones to surveil on the movement and also to surveil on camps, okay? And they would get huge information about these camps and they would attack. We find ourselves very confused exactly what is going on. And we realized one of the challenges that we had when we start now, people started seeing them, is that you have no capacity to counter the drones. How do you counter them? You can counter them by physically applying kinetic means, by firing a weapon, or you can use jammers, for example, if you want to. But it's unlikely, and also, as you know, jamming is a double-edged weapon. You jam your communication systems as you're trying to pursue the enemy. So we have challenges that you here in this institution can help in addressing as we move into the future. And therefore, if we had a situation where undersea drones will be developed, they are there now, how much effect will they have on ships plying ports in Mombasa and Lamu? It will be drastic. So what do we need to have? We have to have technologies that can be able to counter these, because there's no way we're going to stop the movement of this technology. In the space, you must be aware that space has also become a very contested area. Space, which is a region above 100 kilometers above mean sea level surrounding the Earth, has become not only an area of interest to the military, but also to civilian and huge corporations, launching small satellites, cube satellites, for either remote sensing or for research purposes. And the reason why it has become very contested is that because of this region being unregulated by the International Telecommunication Union, it's not like the geostationary orbits. It is very easy for any would-be adversary to launch in future an attack from the sky, from the space. And that is why, within the context of the military, space has become a domain of warfare. Just like land, air, and sea. So space is a domain of warfare to the extent that it is important to be able to have ability to influence what is taking place in space. You are aware that there is a Kenya Space Agency domiciled within the Ministry of Defense. And there's a huge task for them to be able to unpack the threats that will come from this particular space. And this can only be done in collaboration with institutions like yours. The other area that is critical is the cyber domain, which is also a domain of warfare. And you remember that this particular cyber domain became a domain of warfare in 2008 when Russia attacked Georgia. And for those who have read this, and I can see some students are very keen on this, is that it became the winning dimension of that particular warfare. By having attacked all the government websites, blinding the entire country's telecommunication system, and controlling the entire space of cyber within Georgia. And that was the point when the Americans established in 2009 a cyber command, knowing that this is a huge challenge. And we are not behind that. We also learned lessons from that to be able to undertake major innovations in the cyberspace. So, what is happening in the global security dimension is that the nature of war is not going to change, because the nature of war is bloody. It's going to continue to be bloody. It's going to continue to be unregulated, precisely because there is a decline in multilateralism. The reason why it was easy in the early years of the Cold War was that there was a sense that the multilateral organizations like the United Nations had the teeth to in some of these areas. Today, because of this multipolarity system, the United Nations and other regional organizations, including ours, the African Union, have been very, very docile because of that diffusion of power from various areas. And therefore, they are not able to deal with the issues as they should be. So the war then, the nature of it will continue to be very, very challenging. And the character of war, that is how war is fought, is going to change dramatically. It's going to change dramatically because drone warfare has become a major game changer. You will know, just across our border in Ethiopia, the Ethiopian armed forces was under huge pressure until they brought in the drones to be able to compete with them. The employment of drones in the Ukraine war, and including what is happening in the Gaza, is the game changer. The challenge with these drones, as I said, is that they are readily available, and it is likely that they will be available to the bad guys. And once the bad guys get them, then it's the whole war situation, whether it is war against terror, or whether it is interstate war between countries, it will continue to be very, very bloody. Now, scholarly environment where you can be able to bring to bear ideas that can be able to help countries to navigate this very, very, very challenging area. The other area which I need to look into is the role of leadership in this particular domain, particular dimension. We paint this particular globe environment as one that is volatile, is uncertain, okay, and it is one that we have to be able to be very alert about. Now, the question has always been whether leadership competencies and leadership development systems that have worked in the past will work into the future. You are being trained to be future leaders. Obviously, when you live here, you will be leaders because you'll have to go and lead. I said I was trained as a 20-year-old and I became a leader. I got 36 young soldiers that I led as a second lieutenant, as a 20-year-old. And the senior most in that particular platoon or troop happened to be my father. So you have to lead him because you're trained to be a leader. But are these competences that we had in those days applicable as we move into the future? I think not. There has to be a tweaking of how leadership will be undertaken in the future. And I want to give a study of what the military, and the military that I know about for the last 40 years is Kenya Defense Forces has done to redefine leadership. And as you all know, the military is called the profession of arms. Most of you will be engineers. Like when I joined there, I was told your engineering is not applicable now. You will be a profession of arms, because you have to know how to fight and win wars. And so the end of the Cold War, as you know it, brought in also dimensions that made the leaderships to start changing on how leadership is done. We are very fortunate in the Kenya Defense Forces that we had very strong leaders who recognized the changing global environment and the need to have leadership that is able to align with the changes that are taking place in the global environment, not just within the region. And that was called General Tonje, Daudi Tonje, who, when he became the chief of the Defense Forces, initiated the change of leadership. In the past, the doctrine of warfighting was based on what is called attritional warfare. You hit the enemy as hard as you can. You destroy as much as you can. And this had changed because we are no longer armies fighting armies. It was army fighting smaller groups of terrorists or guerrillas. It became asymmetric warfare. asymmetric warfare. You're not fighting in a symmetrical nature. You're fighting somebody who is weaker, but who can cause a lot of trouble because they have the capacity to conduct themselves in a different way. So the idea there was to change the leadership development program that we had adopted for a long time. And as you know, the styles of leadership revolve around positional leadership, where it is do what I say, I'm the boss, and if you don't, you're in big trouble. And there is that you are able to have consultative, participative leadership style. So the military adopted what is called, because initially, as you said, I said it was a command and control system. Commander says this, and that is it. And it changed to a mission leadership. Mission leadership to the extent that the situation had changed to the extent that the forces were not being deployed in big groups. They were being deployed in small teams. You know, you have a team deployed, so for example, you have about 50 teams deployed in Somalia, being led by young people like yourselves, and they have to depend on themselves for a whole year through a young leader who leads them. So the mission leadership was designed in a way that if we had to undertake a certain task in a certain place, and that task was assigned to Major X, who is given 300 people, soldiers, to go with, and to stay there for the next 1 year, you ensure that you organize that team to have all the requirements that they need. They'll have a doctor, they'll have somebody who is a counselor, they'll have everybody in that team. And so that whenever anything happens, the team can sustain itself for as long as it can. For that to happen then, there was a requirement for us to look at how do you define the mission. You provide a mission to that person, okay? Provide him the resources, and let him figure out how he's going to survive. But the mission is well defined. I need you to ensure that the Al-Shabaab has been cleared around your area of 100 or 20 kilometers radius. That is the mission. You have the resources. The how you do it is your job. I am not going to come to ask you what you do, as long as you do clear the area in 20 kilometers. And that became the genesis of what we call mission command in the military, which is mission leadership. They must understand the purpose, the why. Why are they doing it? That's the first thing. They have to understand what they're supposed to do. They figure out how to do it, but I'll provide all the resources to you to do the job. Okay? And then you organize your people in teams, small teams, agile team, an adaptable team. They can adapt themselves during rainy season, they can adapt themselves during dry seasons, but they have all the equipment they require, but they're supposed to deliver the mission, and by when is well defined. And I remember some times back, Safaricom was very keen to establish how we have been able to develop this particular mission leadership concept. I had a chance to speak to over 6,000 of their staff members on this matter. And most companies now, most corporations, most companies abroad, locally and even abroad, are living within this, are borrowing from the military. And I said, a lot has been borrowed from the military, and for good reason. So the ability to form small teams, agile teams, adaptable teams, who know exactly what the leadership wants to achieve. Okay, they have the resources. And because they're educated, these gentlemen here are highly educated. They have all the answers to the problem. The issue is that the team itself must trust each other, and they must trust the leader. And that becomes the first principle of mission leadership, is trust. You have to be able to trust that my team member will not bolt when the first bullet comes through. He has to stick with us. But that trust is brought about by training. Training. One of the most important undertaking in the military is developing the soldier and the officer in training. You've heard about my training. It is not by accident that happens. It is training for you to be able to train others. And so that when people have knowledge, they will have a common understanding of what is supposed to be done. And therefore, the team will be able to deliver the mission in the manner that the leadership requires. As well as when you join the Kenya Defense Forces today as an officer, you will know that you will get training. Because there is a German general called Rono, who was very, very effective in the Second World War, fought in North Africa, and he's first-class training. Okay? Because you give them knowledge, you give them training, they can do anything. And the second one is welfare. You take care of themselves, take care of the people, make sure they have enough remuneration, they have food, they have hospitals, they have all these issues. They will be able to do the job. So mission command then is a function of training, to be able to get the right training and the first-class training for them to be able to undertake the job that they're supposed to do. The other one that is important is that there has to be collaboration and cooperation amongst not just the team, but also the lateral teams, okay? Our Defense Forces deploys 5,000 soldiers in Somalia, okay? In teams of 250 to 300 people. So there are very many teams all over the place. The teams must also be able to communicate among themselves because they have to reinforce each other in case of serious challenges. So that cooperation and coordination is critically important. How do you facilitate that coordination of, say, 50 teams? You need information technology, isn't it? And one of the challenges that I had when I was commanding the army was that because sometimes radios sometimes have challenges because of, as you know, atmospheric conditions. The high-frequency radios will not speak at certain times, so you have this kind of communication breakdowns. The soldiers decided that because we don't have any other means, we are going to use Hormud. Hormud is like Safaricom in Somalia. The import of that is that Hormud is controlled by Al-Shabaab. So whatever you say in it, they know. So you move to a particular direction, you go for a patrol, you get into a landmine, you're blown up because they are listening to them. And the whole question was, and I got to speak to young graduates who are joined, and I said to them, we have to create a system that cannot be used by Al-Shabaab. One of the challenges was that do we withdraw all the cell phones from the soldiers? You can do that. You can do that, but the implication is that they cannot be able to speak to their families. So which means that you have provided a problem of morale, and people will be dejected, they will not fight. So these young engineers told me, sir, we're going to do this, and they worked with Safaricom to establish a virtual network, okay, that they could use during special times. When they come for meals, they're able to call their families, when they have special messages of obtaining a lot of soldiers. So the whole question of innovation is critically important, so that without that, the knowledge that they acquired from universities like yours would be having very serious challenges. So in conclusion then, ladies and gentlemen, because I think we've been talking now for the last, 1 hour, Professor, you're keeping time, is that the mission leadership encourages people to think. Because I don't tell you what to do. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. So you will think, and you will think with your team, and you will find a solution, which is critically important. It also encourages confidence among team members, because then you know that tomorrow you have another mission. I know the kind of people that I can be able to group with. And also leverages on each other's competencies. As I said, the team is made up of different professions. You know, civil engineer, electrical, everybody's in it. So you leverage on each other's competencies. And the most important is strive to accomplish the mission. Because at the end of the day, the mission must be accomplished. Asante sana for listening, and now I'm open to the questions.